Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Hello, friends. So, the topic that I would like to talk about today is the topic of thirst. Right? And when I say thirst, I'm not necessarily talking about the need for a drink, although that is connected a little bit. This word, this English word, thirst, is one of the translations for a very important Dhamma word. That word is Tanha. Right? Tanha is usually translated as craving. So maybe you've heard about craving before. But perhaps you haven't heard about thirst. If you look up Tanha in the Pali dictionary, you'll see craving, but also as a secondary translation are thirst. And if you read the teachings of the Buddha, actually, I think this is where the Buddha is using the definition, the English translation of it as thirst is much more in line with the Buddha using this term. What are we like when we're thirsty? Maybe you haven't had anything to drink in a long time, a day, maybe even, right? Science tells us that we can go about only 3 days without drinking something, right? Because our body is made up of lots of water and we need to replenish that liquid. So that feeling of being thirsty is something that all human beings, not only human beings, but all animals, any being that needs to drink, right, to live, understands that feeling of being thirsty. The uncomfortableness in our mouths, the feeling of being dehydrated, and a strong desire, strong push to get a drink, to put some liquid down your mouth so that your body can be replenished. Right? This is something that we all understand. Even young kids can understand this. Now, let's apply this to Dhamma. If you know the Four Noble Truths, right? Maybe you were born Buddhist and you learned about the Four Noble Truths from your young age, or you've converted and you learned a lot about the Four Noble Truths. What is the cause of our dukkha? It's our tanha, our thirst. And I think a good way to understand this is to bring in another concept that the Buddha talks about. This is called kamogha. Kamogha, kama is sensuality, sense pleasures, like the 5 chords of sensual pleasures, right? Ogha means a flood. So what the Buddha is telling us is that when we are born, when we are within this being, we are constantly wading through a flood of pleasant experiences. Pleasant sights, sounds, tastes, touches, odors, pleasant thoughts. Right? And we really like those things, don't we? When there's a pleasant sight, we want to continue watching it. We want to see more of it. A pleasant smell, we like the smell. And maybe if it's edible, because the smell is so good, we want to have a bite. We want to eat it. Right? We, as beings, stuck in this samsaric journey, we like to chase after all of this flood. Right? There's so much. There's so many pleasant things to experience. So many things that there's not enough for even one lifetime. Even if you live to 120 years old, and all you did when you were awake was chase after pleasant sensual experiences, there still wouldn't be enough time to experience it all. Because we're so thirsty. Right? We have this thirst to continuously experience all kinds of pleasant things. And of course, when we die, we wish that we could stay around and experience more. We haven't been sated yet. We haven't filled our stomachs up with water yet. We haven't filled our stomachs up with enough food yet. Enough experiences. Right? So what happens? That thirst is the impetus. That thirst is the root of why we continue on to the next life. Because there's more pleasant things to chase after. More things to experience. It's like maybe there's a festival, and it's a 7-day festival, right? And you go to the festival one day and you have so much fun and you have experience all kinds of things. And then you go home at that night and you go to bed and you're thinking, yes, tomorrow I'm going to continue to experience and to chase after these wonderful experiences. Right? And so you go to bed, you lose consciousness. The next day you wake up and you continue on doing the same thing. It's no different for this cycle of rebirth, for this samsara. You reach the end of your life, whether that's when you're 10 or 30 or 80. And because of our thirst, because of our strong desire, our thirst to keep experiencing these things, to keep grasping after pleasant experiences, well, we're going to wake up again. It's going to be in a different body, a different form, but still even, we can use that body, use that form to chase after pleasant experiences. Because this is our habit. The Buddha talks about anusayas. These are underlying tendencies. But these are tendencies so deep, so subtle and so refined that they go beyond just the habits of this lifetime. Right? These are subtle, refined habits of the mind. And you can experience these. You can investigate these within your own mind and your own experience. It's very simple to know. When we have a pleasant experience, it's our underlying tendency, our habit, to do what? To hold on to it, to not want to let it go, to have more of it. And if we lose it, to chase after it again. Right? That's our habit. That's what we as beings do. It is our tendency, because of our thirst, to keep chasing after these things. To keep wanting them more and more and more. And so this is why we as Buddhist practitioners, when we follow the Noble Eightfold Path, what are we doing? We're going against that thirst. Right? When we practice generosity, what are we doing? We're going against that thirst. When we give, when we do a dana for the monks, we give to a charity, we give to something like that, that's going against our thirst. Because our natural tendency is to hoard, right? Greediness, to have more. But when you give away, that's going against your thirst, right? Practicing the Noble Eightfold Path is going against the stream, as the Buddha says. Right? So when you practice generosity, dana, then you're going against the stream. You're going against your thirst. Right? Maybe you know about the petas, which are the ghosts, right? Needy ghosts. In the traditions like Japan and Tibet, they have what they call the hungry ghosts, right? And they usually describe them as ghosts like their mouths are like really only like the size of a pinprick, right? But they're always so hungry and thirsty, and they can't be sated. They can't be full because they can only put such a little bit of food in, right? That's us. That's not necessarily, that's a type of being you can be born into, but it's also our natural state as a being in samsara, because we can't get enough. And if we understand the Four Noble Truths, because we can't get enough, we cause ourselves suffering. Right? This is the most important thing about this. Like, you might get in society and in different religions or whatever, you might get, people say, you shouldn't do this, this is bad. The god or gods will not like it, you'll go to hell, etc., etc. And you see that a little bit in Buddhism. But mainly, the reason why you wouldn't want to go against your thirst is because you realize you're harming yourself in doing it. That you're causing your own suffering. Right? So a right-thinking person, a person who's starting to develop wisdom, would think, wow, why do I keep doing this to myself? Why don't I practice letting go of that thirst? And of course, it's very hard. Nobody ever said it was easy, not even the Buddha. But he says, the practitioners do what is hard. It doesn't matter if it's hard, they do it anyway. Right? So when you practice going against your thirst, going against your tanha, your craving, well, guess what? You're going to fail. And that's okay. Right? Because it's not easy. You might go against your craving for 10 minutes, right? Just a little bit. But then your mind fights back 10 times as hard. Right? No, we want to keep experiencing things. We want to do this. Why would you even think of such a thing? We think of such a thing is because when we understand how we are creating suffering for ourselves, we naturally want to realize, well, I don't want to do that anymore. Or we're creating conditions that cause our family members to suffer, right? Or the people around us. Why would I want to act in such a way that would be harmful for myself and others? Let me try to be better. Let me try to improve. Right? But this tanha is very strong, very deep. Right? In the Dhammapada, they say even if it rained gold, that would not be enough for a person. My preceptor Bhante Ji always has a wonderful story that I like to relate. And he says that suppose there were a man who was in a house, and the house had some holes in the roof, and then it rained, but it rained gold. And he woke up the next day, and his whole house was filled with gold. And what do you think his first thought was? It wasn't, oh, all the wonderful things I could do with this gold. No, you know what his first thought was? If I only had a bigger house. Right? That's our thirst. That's our craving. That perfectly, succinctly explains our mind. This is what we want to do. We want more, right? Even if you ever see like squirrels or some animals who are collecting, nuts for the winter, they'll have in their hand, they'll have a bunch of stuff, and then they'll try to hold on to what they have and add more to it, and things are falling and stuff like that. Maybe you've even been that way. I have. I've done this not only as a squirrel, but as a human. Had lots of things that I liked in my hand, food or whatever, and I wanted more. I was grabbing more. I can hold more, right? Because that's our natural tendency. That's what we're working with. And when we follow the Noble Eightfold Path, that's what we work against. Slowly, gradually, we become more content. Slowly, gradually, we don't want to chase after things so much. It becomes really exhausting, right? If it happens, if it comes, if you experience it, then that's good. But then when it goes away, you understand, well, this is the nature of things. It's too exhausting for me to go chasing after it. Maybe it'll come back again, right? So slowly, over time, letting go of this thirst. Letting go of this craving. Right? It is this that causes us suffering. It is this that keeps us bound from birth to birth. Over and over again. And so isn't that a wonderful message that the Buddha gives us? Right? The Buddha, some people will say the Buddha's teachings are very depressing. Right? That he's saying that life is suffering. And in the subtlest depths of his teaching, yes, he is technically saying that. But what people fail to understand is that that's only half of the Buddhist teachings. The other half of the Buddhist teachings is letting go, developing true contentment, true happiness, true peace. That's the positive, hopeful message of the Buddha. That you can, even if you think, this is too much for me, I can't do this. The Buddha tells you, yes, you can. Right? Not overnight. Not everybody's even many monks are not going to be awakened in this very lifetime. But practice. Follow this Noble Eightfold Path. Follow in my footsteps, the Buddha says. Practice the Dhamma. Let go of this very thirst, this very craving. And you'll see, as you practice, that strong thirst will be less. It will be like, oh, you had some drinks a couple hours ago. You're kind of being thirsty, but not so much. You can hold out for a couple more hours, right? So your thirst, less, less, and less. And then eventually it's like the feeling of you're full. And you say, I don't need any more, right? I can let go. I can be fully awakened and end this samsaric journey. Right? So it's very important for us to think about this very important concept of Buddhism. Whether we're a layperson, whether we're a monastic, this is so at the core, right? The Buddha tells us that, using the simile of the elephant's footprint, right? The Buddha says, just as all of the footprints of all the animals on land can fit within the elephant's footprint, so too do all the teachings fit within the Four Noble Truths. So it's important for us to understand these Four Noble Truths. And it's important for us to know the origin of our suffering. The origin of our suffering is our thirst, our craving, our tanha. Right? There's enough flood of sensual pleasures to keep going on indefinitely. We could just keep going life to life, basically forever, if we wanted to. But we'd still be stuck in samsara. We'd still have suffering as our companion. We'd still never be sated. So it's up to us how we want to practice, how we want to choose to follow the path or not to follow the path. Because kamoga, the flood of sensual pleasures, is always there. There's always going to be, because we have a body, because we have senses, they're always going to be there. When we follow the 5 precepts, what do you think we're doing? Practicing restraint. When we try not to live a hedonistic lifestyle, where we have a bit more sense restraint, then we're going against our craving too. So friends, I highly encourage you, in whichever way you think is best, from practicing dana, following precepts, meditating, or all of them together, because they're all part of the path. But practice this with a mindset and an aspiration to lessen our thirst, to lessen our craving, and eventually we can end our samsaric journey. So friends, with this short talk, I wish you very much spiritual success in lessening your thirst. Thank you.